This is the Asian Rebel Club podcast, a space for the ones who grew up chasing approval and are now learning how to be free. I am Crystal Ren, entrepreneur, creative, and recovering achievement addict. Each week, we dive into honest conversations with Asian rebels, rewriting what success, identity, and freedom really mean. If you're ready to live your story, not somebody else, welcome home. Meet Darice Chang, a queer Taiwanese-American journalist, researcher, and writer who lives at the intersection of spirituality, identity, and cultural rebellion. Featured in Netflix's Midnight Asia and a former pageant, Darice defies stereotypes with every step. In this episode, she opens up about her journey from growing up in a conservative family to reclaiming truth through journalism, Buddhist meditation, and self-expression. We talk gender, culture, queerness, and the sacred power of choosing yourself, even when it breaks every rule you were raised with. Hi, Darice. Welcome to the show.
Hi. Thanks so much for having me. Super excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm so excited to ask you a lot of questions as well. So the first question is, tell us about yourself and also your life story.
Okay, yeah. So my name is Darice Chang. I'm a Taiwanese-American from Minnesota originally. So both my parents are from Taipei. I feel like we did have like a very international upbringing. Like we'd come back to Taiwan like during the summers and stuff. And also my mom was very insistent that we learned Chinese first, which I'm really grateful for. Because like I really love languages and I feel super blessed to like grow up in that kind of environment.
So you've described yourself as queer and non-binary.
Yeah.
You've also lived between cultures, as you mentioned, that you were born and raised in Minnesota, and now you're in Taipei. When did you first realize your life path would not follow the script?
I feel like maybe in college because like I had a great time as a college student. So I ended up going to the University of Minnesota. I initially actually went for biology. So I was an honors bio because like I was gonna maybe like be a doctor or something. Just very typical like immigrant family in the United States kind of path, right? And
Was that something you wanted to do yourself, or was that something that your parents wanted you to do, or you learn it that, like, being a doctor is honorable somewhere else?
Yeah, I think it's just like, because my dad was an engineer, right? So he's a software engineer. And so we grew up with that. And then when we were younger, we lived in Rochester, Minnesota, which has a lot of doctors, obviously. So those were kind of like the two things that my mom wanted me to do. And I really love the learning part, but all of the practical. So you have to do, like for honors, you have to do a lab. And so I went to all those. Like the learning part was really fun, but every time we did something practical, I just didn't enjoy the process. I was not happy. And like we also did we did some shadowing internships, so I got to like observe surgeries and like that they were doing research on like with dogs and stuff. And I just felt really sad. I was just like, I don't feel good about this. Like we have to kill so many animals and like I understand it's like for like we're trying to help people by doing this, but just on like a very basic level, I didn't feel good about it. And also like a lot of the research that we did do, I just didn't feel good. I was like, I don't want to do this for a living because I'm already like I'm doing it right now as practice and I feel so miserable. So in my third year, I was like, okay, I feel like I'm going to switch. Did a double major in art and Japanese. Wouldn't sort of be pigeonholed into something that I already felt very strongly was not what I wanted to do. Yeah.
So that was the first time when you realized that you were not going to follow, whatever that is conventional or whatever that was right for perhaps for a community or family. And how did that kind of transpire into, in the end, this full expression of who you are right now?
I think because like after graduating, right, you're sort of like trying to figure out what you want to do and also like trying to figure out like, I don't know, just like adulting. So I initially wanted to go live abroad for a while. My first choice was Japan because I learned the language, but it was the same year as the Tohoku earthquake. So my whole family was like, don't go to Japan. There's radiation. Like, come to Taiwan. We're all here. And I was like, okay, cool. Yeah, let's do it. So then I went and then taught English for a little while, which is what a lot of people do, and then ended up doing translation instead. It was super fun because I got to improve my Chinese. At the time, like my Chinese was not that good. And so translation is actually a really good way to improve your language skills. And then eventually I was like, okay, I should like go back to the US and like get a real job. So went back, packed up my life in Minnesota, and then went out to Los Angeles and bounced around for a while. At the same time, I was like helping my friend with his media company, just like for free on the side for fun, because he had a platform called Media Connections, and they interview Japanese music artists when they come to the United States. So I would do the interviews in Japanese, they would transcribe them, and then we publish them in English. So because I did a pageant, so I did Miss Taiwanese-American. I got to meet this guy, Freddie Lim, who was running for a legislator at the time. He's like also Taiwanese, and I met him through the pageant CEO because I like their band. They're called Thonic. They're like a Taiwanese heavy metal band, more like black metal. So he was like, hey, we need people to help with the election. We're looking specifically for like young women to help canvass. And I was like, okay, I'm a female presenting person. I like, have been sort of wanting to go back to Taipei because I didn't feel very grounded in LA. Like, because, I don't have family out there. I ended up coming back to Taipei and then volunteering with them. And that's when I started doing a lot more like interpretation and translation for like international news. And at the time, there were not as many international journalists based in Taiwan or Taipei. So it'd be like people coming in from Korea or a lot of people from Beijing coming over for like foreign outlets and stuff. I was doing the international press conferences and I'd be like, hey, I feel like maybe I could also write. So I started writing, I got some bylines, and then I started pitching, and then I started getting published more. And so then I just kind of did that for a while. And at the same time, we were also doing like live streams for international media. So I did one for like Katagalon. So I was like hosting, just like talking about what's going on the ground. And because of that, I got connected with film people, right? Because you need a film crew to do the live stream.
I'm just very curious about the personal aspects of your identity and how that kind of emerged in this whole journey that you're on. And it seems like you were really in cultures, but you're immersed into Japanese culture and Chinese culture and American culture. And then you're constantly like going around in different industries and also just in different locations to find yourself. And I wonder, how did that impact your identity as, and also your gender identification? And I also understand that in the meantime, you got married and also got divorced. So I'm really kind of interested in your, like, where your head was in this whole journey to figure out who you are as a person in the end.
Yeah, so I think, okay, so I'll start back with the getting married thing. So I actually got married while I was still in college to my high school sweetheart because I don't know, like half my graduating class from high school got married right after high school. So it was like not too common.
After high school?
Yeah, like half of them got married because like we live in, like
didn't know that was a thing for Minnesota.
Yeah, like we're kind of rural-ish. Yeah. So it's like, and also like cost of living is low. It is like, it's interesting because we're in the Midwest, which is traditionally conservative, and we do have a lot of like Christian sort of people, but they're also very liberal. I just feel like we got the nice Christians who are like, live and let live, like tolerance, right? Like everyone's super helpful and like friendly and stuff. But like going back to, I got married to my high school sweetheart because we'd been together for I think 5 or 6 years. Yeah. And it just sort of seemed like the natural progression of things. But there was this moment, like when he proposed to me, I felt like I don't want to. So he's like, will you marry me? I was like, my initial response, my gut response was no. And I didn't really know why either. I was just like,
you felt that. You felt that in your heart. You're like, like you paused and you're like, not sure kind of reaction.
Yeah. Because I think part of it was like, I feel like we're really young. Like, even though like we were together for a long time, when we were like working on building a life together and everything, I felt like we weren't aligned on a lot of maybe like key values, but that's not really something that like my parents taught me growing up, right? Obviously they taught me about like, like
well, what kind of
being
key values
person.
that you guys are not aligned?
So for example, I had a study meditation practice since I was in middle school, and I was really committed to it. Actually, one of the reasons like I went to Taiwan after college was because our meditation group has a center here. And I was like, okay, if I'm not going to Japan, I'll want to go to Taiwan and I want to really commit to this practice for a while. Because I feel like it's really
Right.
helpful, like, especially as a young person. You're just starting your life. I feel like meditation is really helpful in like helping you
Explore all
to
these
yourself.
things.
Yeah. And so I was just like, I really want to do this. And so he came with me, but like he did not have a good time in Taiwan, I feel like. And also like he never really committed to the practice with me, which I feel was really important because I'm like, hey, this practice is really central to my life. It's like part of, like me as a person. Like I meditate for like an hour every morning and I would love my life partner to also have this practice. I don't know. I just felt like those sorts of things, right? Like we're not really like I'm really committed to personal growth, professional growth, whatever, exploring myself, exploring the world. He just wanted to stay in Minnesota. And so that was sort of like the nail in the coffin, as it were. So then I was like, okay, maybe
Right. And
yeah.
so, quite question there. I think that a lot of times when you're growing up in an Asian household, we were taught that stability is number one, right? We're taught that, if two people, like, it doesn't really matter what, because you kind of assume that we would have the same value system, almost like, we're all going to focus on building a family. We're all going to focus on providing for the kids and, giving them a good environment to grow up in and they go to good school, yada, 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 right? This goes on. And especially when there isn't really like a glaring thing about the other person and be like, oh, this guy's a nice guy. Like, they treat me well and stuff. And it's just like maybe certain things, for example, when you're saying that, you guys don't meditate together or you guys don't travel together, like that is not obvious. For example, if we were to explain to our parents why we feel like there is a bit of misalignment and why does that impact me that I need to take such a drastic measure to end this thing? Like, did they understand? How did you like come to term with it yourself? Was there like a moment where you're like, I just couldn't do it? And what's your feeling at the time?
I think for me, like we sort of ended things very serendipitously, I feel like. So like we had gone back to Minnesota and I would get up every morning,
Right.
meditate, do my practice, and then translate for about like 4 hours. And then I would like take a break and then do something for the rest of the day. He would want to cuddle. And so like when I start to work, I get really focused and I don't like to be interrupted. So then I told him, okay, maybe we can like schedule some time in. I'll cuddle with you for 15 minutes. And he just had like a total meltdown. He was like, why do I have to schedule time with you? Like, aren't we supposed to like love each other? And I was like, we can still love each other, but like I have my day set up and this is optimized for me. Like I just want to schedule it in.
Yeah.
So then he was like, okay, maybe you should leave for a while. And then I was like, okay. So then I like moved back in with my dad. Like, okay, we're just gonna
Really? That's it?
yeah,
Like that's such a small thing.
yeah. And I mean, like, there were maybe like little things leading up to it. Like, he often felt like I didn't prioritize him, but I also have other things I want to do. And so, like, I'm trying to make a balance. And so I think for him, it was more like the emotional feeling. Maybe he feels like I have to always ask for affection. And for me, I think I'm more like logical sometimes like
Right.
that. I have things that I'm
Right.
passionate
Right.
about. And like, I love you, but like, you need to balance that with a lot of things. So yeah, I mean, we didn't break up right away. Like, we were like, okay, we're gonna take a break. And then we took like, I think a couple weeks or something. And then he actually started doing his like own meditation practice during that time. And then one day when he was like visiting me at my dad's house, he was like, okay, I feel like maybe if you want to like go to LA and whatever, I should let you go. And, we shouldn't continue this partnership.
I was just shocked of like how small, like, because when people are thinking about divorce, when a marriage broke down, especially two people are together for such a long time, like we're thinking about like something like earthquake happen or, like especially in the Asian context where I felt like, divorce is still like quite stigmatized. So I guess maybe I'm just really curious about like how come such a small thing. To me, it's just so weird. Was it because there's so many like accumulative issues that you guys both kind of you were unhappy in your own ways, and this thing just happened, and he wanted to like what happened?
I felt like there were like little things that I wasn't too happy with, but they weren't necessarily like deal breakers like individually. So it'd be little things like, hey, I
Yeah,
feel like he doesn't have a lot of motivation career wise.
yeah,
And he also like communicated like, oh, I just want to, like you can go make the money. I want to stay home and take care of the kids. And I'm like, okay, I was actually hoping for more of like a 50-50 split.
yeah.
Like I'm not opposed to the idea of a house husband, but that's like not, that's not what I want. I would like it to be more equal. And
Right.
so just sort of
Is he
like,
white?
yeah, he's white. But then thinking long term, right? Like, and I think another thing is like I sort of realized like, oh, I don't want to have children with this person. And at the time I hadn't
Mm,
made a decision if I wanted to have kids or not. But then I was
mm.
thinking about it and I was like, okay, like if I don't feel safe like having children with someone, maybe this isn't a good life partner because like I wouldn't feel safe with like,
Mm.
I wouldn't feel not necessarily like safe,
Right,
but like
right.
like it's not values aligned. Like this is not the environment I would like my children to grow up with in the event that I have children, right? Oh, that I think, just for me
Right,
more like
right,
values misalignment, right? Yeah.
right. And do you think it was more of a like heart to be like I don't feel like it, or like a head decision and be like logically doesn't make any sense? Like, what do you think that was?
I think it's both, right? But I think having heart alignment is really important because there are a lot of things where, like,
Yeah.
if you try to just force it with logic, like, that's going to show up like later because you're not
Hmm.
emotionally or like energetically aligned with this decision. So I think both of them, like, both work.
Right, 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 right. And it's very interesting you mentioned. So, like before we move on, I just wanted to ask, how did your parents react to it? Just personally, I'm very curious about them because by the sound of it, they were like the typical Taiwanese immigrants in the US, like, family comes first, and like we're just going to provide, like, we all need to follow the script, right? So when you broke the news to them, what did they say?
I think they were both quite supportive. Yeah. Because I feel like my mom.
Interesting.
Yeah, well, my dad's actually kind of a hippie. My dad has always been like, money's not the most important thing. You should be happy. Like, I'm going to support you no matter what you do. Be happy with what you're doing and what you want to do, and to like, have good values. And I feel like my mom actually, like, low key always wanted me to marry like another Asian person, specifically another like Chinese, Taiwanese
So
person.
they're like, okay, finally. They're like, we have another shot at this.
Yeah, so I feel like, I mean, I don't want to speak for my mom, but I do kind of feel like
Yeah.
that's what she was hoping for. So, yeah, like they were both really supportive.
Okay. I guess now that makes sense. Now the response makes sense, because I was like, if it's like a traditional Asian parent, they'll be like, oh my gosh, like, don't bring shame to the family or whatnot. Like,
Yeah.
look at him, he's a nice guy. But if that's what they secretly want, like, that makes sense.
Yeah, I feel like that's definitely what secretly my mom wanted. Because I just like thinking back, I remember one of the first things she said to me after like I brought my boyfriend home for the first time. They're like, "He's
Yeah.
nice. At least it's not a black guy." And I'm just like,
My gosh.
sorry. Like, this needs to be
Yeah. Yeah,
addressed.
yeah. She tried to say the nice thing, but she
Yeah,
showed her cards.
yeah. So like, and like, I don't want anyone to like, shit on my mom or anything because like I love her. I love my mom so much. She's like she's like sacrificed so much for this family, and like I wouldn't be who I am today without her, right? But like,
Yeah.
so little things, the little things, yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Let's just be honest. Asian parents can be very racist, right? And
yeah,
I honestly think that Asians are actually the most racist of all. Like we just like our own people, and with like every other race, we always have some kind of opinion, and it's not necessarily flattery opinion, right? Like it's just it is what it is, especially last generation.
Yeah. So like I don't blame her. Like she is definitely a product of her time and upbringing and everything. But yeah, like the discrimination towards people of
Yeah.
other
Yeah.
backgrounds, right, is definitely there. Yeah.
You also mentioned that when you were growing up, you learned how to meditate in a very young age, right?
Mhm.
So how, first of all, that's very rare, because I think meditation probably started to become a mainstream thing maybe like 10 years ago.
Mm.
So how did that help you? How did that shape you? How did that kind of help you to connect more to yourself and what you want and your life path in general?
I think for me, it's been like immensely helpful in my own life path, right? Because it helps you a lot with like emotional regulation and like anxiety, depression, things like that, which I've had struggles with like all of these things. I started doing meditation because I started to get panic attacks at the age of 10. So
Wow.
yeah.
Have you ever figured out what that was about? Was it because of
Oh.
school or like something specific?
Yeah, so like my parents were also very like physically abusive when we were children. Yeah, just because, they had a very traditional upbringing.
Really?
So they were like, oh, you have to discipline the children, and
Mm,
this is how we discipline them. But I think for me, because I'm a very sensitive person, I'm like a highly sensitive person. So that kind of energy to me is like exceptionally violent.
yeah.
And so I just started, I think first time I ever had a panic attack, I just felt like the whole world was like shaking like an earthquake. But like we don't have earthquakes in Minnesota. So it
Mm,
was like terrifying. You can't breathe. You feel like you're dying, blah, blah.
mm,
And I think that was just like in response to, like the trauma that I had experienced from a young age, right? And again, like I don't blame my parents. Like they did
right.
a lot better than the previous generation, but just I had a very strong reaction to it.
Yeah.
So then I was like, oh, okay. Like they thought it might have been like an inner ear balance for a long time because like I felt dizzy. But then eventually I kind of like figured it out on my own because like I like reading. So I was like reading and trying to figure out and I was like, oh, it's probably like, it sounds like it's a panic attack. And then I read that, you can control it with like breathing, meditation, blah, blah, blah. So I sort of self-taught meditation for a while. And then later my dad, he's
Yeah.
always been really interested in like cultivation or like spirituality. So when he was being a contractor, he'd have like months without work, right? Because he's just, in between projects. And my mom suggested that he go to
Hmm.
meditation course taught by one of like the local uncles. And so my dad went and then that's where he learned like energy healing and also like a standing meditation. So then he would teach
Mm.
me that and I'd be like, okay, cool. I feel like this is good and I want to learn more. So later when our teacher came to Minnesota from Taiwan, my dad was like, hey, do you want to take the class? I was like, okay, yeah, let's go. So then I signed up for the course and that's like when it started with the meditation practice that I currently do.
Right. And definitely think that it seems like Taiwan has a lot of these mindfulness movements and training,
Mm.
probably more so than a lot of other places in Asia, right? Like, is that true? That's just my impression.
I was actually just talking to a girlfriend about this like 2 days ago. Because she's from Kaohsiung, and then her family sent her to a monastery in the United States.
My gosh.
Yeah,
Really?
yeah, when she was 12. So like we both had like a very long time of meditation and everything. We were talking about it. And I was
Wow.
yeah, there's like a lot of just like meditation cultivation in Taiwan, but I do feel like it tends to be very like traditional. So a lot of it is like Buddhist or Taoist, which makes it less
Right.
accessible to people who aren't in that tradition perhaps. But like the one that I do, it's called like He Universal Love. We're like secular. So there's like no religious connotation, but it is like the style is still very like traditional, sort of like Chinese or
Mm.
Taiwanese style of like in more intense like spiritual cultivation or
Mm.
meditation, I feel like, than what a lot of people in the West are necessarily used to.
What's the
Yeah.
difference? What's the difference? Piques my interest because,
Mm.
I'm Chinese, but I've never heard about it. So what is that?
Yeah. So like secular just means non-religious, right? So like a lot of the
Yeah.
religions that do practice meditation, for example, Buddhism or Taoism, it's like tied to their specific tradition, right? So like Taoism, you do have like
Yeah.
different gods and stuff, or like, sages, like we call it like sunren and stuff like that, that you pay
Right.
respect to. And then same thing in Buddhism. So you have like the different Buddhist gods, like a Guanyin Pusa canon, or like Nilafo, like the god, like the one with the big belly that everyone thinks of. And there's just like different traditions, obviously like the main Buddha, right? And then they have lots of different sects of Buddhism, sort of like Christian,
Mm-hmm.
except for they have, part of it is
Yeah.
the meditation practice. Yeah. So for them, it's like if you want to practice the meditation, you have to like convert to this religion. And so for people that don't want to do that, they have to sort of like look for
Mm.
different avenues to access meditation or spirituality. Yeah. So
Mm.
that's kind of actually why my teacher like
Wow.
did this like secular method, because he's like everyone should have access to it regardless of their personal belief or religious background. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, that is very interesting because I think I'm not sure what happened in, China, because when I growing up in China, first of all, I think meditation like冥想is a very new thing.
Mhm.
Even the concept of it is obviously old because it has a lot of ties to religions, but the practice of it has been very new in terms of its application in the mainstream. So growing up, I've never even thought it was an I don't think I've even seen anywhere where people were taught to meditate outside of a temple, right? So as you said, there's, like this religious meditation, but I don't even think it was like the possibility of being, accessing that part of the religion was even fathomable to most people. And so I think that I don't know how Chinese people regulate their emotions, when I was growing up, maybe they don't, Maybe that's why a lot of them are
Yeah.
really angry. I started to meditate myself when I was much older in my late 20s.
Yeah. I do feel like that, yeah. And like in China, obviously part of it was because of like the regime, right? So there was like
Yeah,
the Cultural Revolution, right? And then they cracked down
yeah,
on religion for
yeah,
so many years. And to my understanding, that's actually still sort of the case. So that definitely makes things more difficult,
yeah,
right?
for sure.
Yeah. But I do feel like there is a movement
Yeah.
recently
So
to like bring meditation to the people because it does have so many proven, like mental health benefits. Yeah.
yeah, definitely. So when you started to meditate from such a young age and, when you were 10 years old, obviously it seemed like it helped with your anxiety. What other benefits have you witnessed and how did that help you to make decisions that's more authentic to yourself?
I think one thing I really enjoy about meditation is like it's like turning inward, right? So you become more familiar with like who you are as a person, how you feel about things, and just like having that intuition is really important to sort of like, I don't know, like deciding your life path kind of. Like whenever you feel lost, you can just, for me anyways, I'll just like take it as a homework and just meditate on it for like a day or a week or something until like I have an answer. And I feel like that's a really good way to live
Wow.
life because it's like you're just always like in tune with yourself and like, in that sort of like
Okay,
authenticity.
so walk me through it. So if you have, let's just say that you're deciding, okay, so let's just say that you're deciding on whether to like just let's just say that you're deciding on divorce.
Okay.
Something that's really, really big and feels like an earthquake. Do you also use meditation as a part of your decision making process? If so, like how do you actually do it?
So like if I have like a major life decision, usually like I do a standing meditation. You can also do sitting. And I sort of just like take the like I think of the question before the meditation. And then during the meditation, I just sort of like set it
Mm,
in like the center of my being and like let my body know this is what I am worried about or concerned with or whatever. And just sort of like let the energy flow, right? Because then you're supposed to like let
yeah.
go, like, don't use your logical brain so much and just like feel sort of like breathing. And then like it's more like attuning your body to like a higher frequency. And then sometimes you'll have these like, yeah,
Mm,
just like you'll have little bits of messages that come from yourself. Because I think
Mm.
The way I sort of conceptualize it is like you sort of access your unconscious, right? Or your subconscious. So your subconscious actually knows what you want or what's good for you. And when you meditate, you're just coming more into contact with it. Yeah. So like even like with the divorce thing, right? Like half a year before I had started to feel like, okay, I feel like our paths are kind of diverging. And if I come to a time where I have to make a decision if I want to stay on my own path or like stay on a path that is true to who I am as a person, and this results in me separating from my partner, will I be okay with that? And at the time, it was a very definite yes. Like you just feel it in your gut. You're like, yes, I will definitely always choose to be true to who I am. Like, regardless of whether or not this person who I do love very much and like we've been together for a long time, they're very important to me. But I think it's more important to live authentically than it is to hang on
Mm.
to a person that is not going to be supportive of that. And so like that came
Right.
maybe like a half year before we actually separated, right? And then later
Right.
when this separation actually was happening, it's like, okay, I already know in the core of my being that this is the decision that I will make. And also, like, not necessarily forcing things because it's like at the time I was also trying to be conscious of his feelings, right? So he sort of like was like going back and forth for a while, like, okay, I don't want to be with you, or like, I do want to be with you. So he would like go back and forth for a while. And I sort of just like was able to stay like consistent because I already knew what decision was right for me. So it's not really like,
Mm.
okay, do I want to be with you or not? It's like, I would like to live my life in alignment with my values. And if you can support that, then we can continue. And if you can't, then then like we're going to separate. And so he was actually the one that proposed that we get divorced in the end because
Mm.
I didn't want to bring it up before he was ready. Like I was ready, but he wasn't ready. So I basically waited for him to be ready and he brought it up before. Like I didn't have to do it. He brought it up himself. And then that's when I was like, okay, so like now you're ready. I've been ready and then we can like co-create this reality now.
Wow. I mean, I felt like that is very powerful just because it's such an emotional process, but you were able to stay very centered to who you are. How did you deal with like, how did you know, for example, like that is like authenticity, that is who you are versus your fear? Like, how did you differentiate it when you are connecting with your core through meditation?
I feel like fear has a very specific feeling, right? So fear is
Mm.
very it's like it makes you feel smaller, right? Like cuz you don't feel safe. It's like very anxious feeling, like when you're scared. So it feels different. Whereas like obviously like, sometimes you'll make decisions because of fear, right? Because of, like scarcity mentality or whatever else. But I think when you feel something like in like the core of your being or like, your spiritual self or something, it feels very comforting or very stable.
Mm.
It can sometimes also be terrifying, like as you realize new things or you realize that maybe the decision that you have to make is terrifying to you. But it's sort of like this undercurrent of, oh, I know. Like I know what is right for me. I know what I have to do. And a lot of times like it's scary at first, but you just have to like keep connecting with that knowing and eventually like you have the strength to bring it into reality. Yeah, that's kind of how I would
Wow.
describe it.
So
Yeah.
So it's like, I think what you describe is almost like there's always a seed of truth. Like maybe there's a lot of, I don't know, dirt or anything, like, things that's piled up on top of it. And that could be fear, that could be conditioning, that could be like what other people think about me, that could be just like what I think about myself. Am I going to be okay? Like all these questions that's uncertain and you don't know how to answer them. But there's almost like the seed of truth that you can't ignore. And that core is very stable. Like you just kind of, if you know there is like that seed, you just need to follow that. And then eventually it will start to grow stronger and stronger. to break through all these other soil on top of it? Like, is that kind of how you would describe it?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. It's like you just, you know, like it's like the core of your being. You like know what is right. And it's just a matter of like, yeah, letting that grow to overcome all of the outside, everything. Yeah.
Right. That's I mean, it's such a beautiful analogy, and I know that you're non-binary and you're queer, and when I first saw your profile, I was like, I didn't even know what drag king is, right? And I need to go watch your Netflix show Midnight Asia, and then you were on stage, you were talking about it. I don't know anything about it. So can you just take us into, when you first grew up, you're not very feminine when you were growing up. And how did that, I guess, that seed of truth started to grow? And when was the moment you're like, this is who I am, and everything kind of clicked and you just follow that?
Yeah. I think for me, it's like, you know, when I was little, like, I remember this. Okay, we had this game in preschool, which is really silly, but just like we had a playhouse, and like all the girls had to like hide in the playhouse, and all the boys could be
Yeah.
dinosaurs, and they would scream at us, and we have to like pretend to be scared. And then I was like, well, I want to be a dinosaur. So then I like went outside and was like screaming with the boys, and then I got in trouble because like I wasn't supposed to be a dinosaur. And so I think at that
Yeah.
point, like you don't really have a concept of like, you know, like there's other options. There's only boy or girl. But then I was like, I feel like maybe I don't want to be a girl. Like I want to be a dinosaur. And then like also growing up, like I wouldn't sit very ladylike. I wasn't, you know, like I wasn't like a huge tomboy. But I also wasn't very girly
Right.
necessarily. And my mom would always tell me like, you know, like you have to sit properly, and then like, you know, she'd say like 不男不女, which means like you're not really like a boy or a girl. And I'm just like, it's supposed to be an insult, but I was like, that feels right. Yeah, I feel like I'm not really one or the other. I just want to be myself. Yeah. So, I mean, I did like later in life, like I did try to learn to be more feminine, which is actually why I did pageant. Like, and also because I wanted to make friends because I was in LA and I was like, I need
Mm.
more friends. I'm kind of awkward. But yeah, so like during pageant, like, you know, like you have to apply for it actually because they'd have a training program and it costs money. And it's like
Right.
college. You have to write an essay and fill out all these questions and have an interview. And then if they choose you, you get to compete in the pageant. So I did make it past. And
Wait.
during the
That's crazy.
thing,
Okay, so I didn't even know that the entire pageant business is like so profit driven. Like I thought that it's obviously free for you to participate, but then you actually need to pay to participate in the competition.
no. I mean, I did do more of a community oriented one because I did Miss Taiwanese-American. So it's very like you represent the Taiwanese-American community as part of like the Taiwan Center of Los Angeles. So it is very
Yeah.
community driven. So we're not like, you know, we're not like Miss USA or something, which is way more intense. But they do still have like certain standard. And so like I think our acceptance rate in our year was like 11%. So it's like it takes work, and which I really enjoy. I'm kind of competitive
Wow.
and like I have really high standards. So I was like, yes, this is what you want. But like the entire time they teach you like makeup and like dance and clothing, whatever. And I just the entire time I was like, I feel like a drag queen. Like I feel like a drag queen. Like I feel like I'm performing womanness, but it doesn't feel like me. And then that later was sort of part of my
Wow.
like gender identity awakening, where it was just like, I feel like being female or being a woman to me is just performance. It's like, you know, I'll put on makeup and
Wow.
like I'll act girly, but it's like, it's not necessarily how I feel. That's
Wow.
kind of
So
how that
okay, so
happened.
that is so powerful because I mean, I just, first of all, I never thought about it. And I think that a lot of people probably, even if they felt that way, they
Uh-huh.
didn't know what that was, right? Because it's such
Yeah.
a, like now you're talking about it makes a lot of sense. It's like, like people probably, and it's so funny because, one of my, one of my best friends from junior high school, she's lesbian. She, after many, many years, I found out that she's lesbian and she didn't tell anyone for years. And she was always this tomboy, where she will wear like athleisure, at a very young age, we're all wearing like dresses. And I think I never understood, like, I didn't even think about it. I didn't even think, oh, okay, maybe that's just how she felt about herself. I just thought that maybe that just would make her comfortable, right? Like she's wearing like sportswear, like whatever, that make her comfortable. But I never thought that like you could be so like attuned to what you even like. Why does that make you feel comfortable? Why does that not make you feel comfortable? What does that say about me? Right? Because I don't think a lot of people even think about it.
Yeah. Because it's like you're not really taught that from a young age. They're just like, oh, this is what you do, A, B, C, and then you just like go through life like that. But it's like it really takes time to like do the reflection and be really just like in tune with yourself. Be like, hey, like why do I do this? Or like why is this more comfortable for me? Yeah.
Right. And what's your reflection process on that? Like when were you like, so clearly you're in pageant and you're like, well, I don't feel like myself. How did you start to explore it and how did you eventually find who you were or what makes you more comfortable?
Yeah, I think part of it was like the term non-binary becoming more like well known because like Demi Lovato came out, I think, and you're just like, oh, okay, so like this is a possibility. Like the way that you present doesn't affect how you feel about yourself. And so I think for me, it just sort of happened slowly. And then especially after, you know how Taiwan passed like same-sex marriage, and we
Yeah.
didn't pass it yet. We had a referendum in 2018, and I felt
Mm,
very
mm,
exceptionally like emotional about it because like in the referendum it didn't pass because a lot of people, I mean, they did some things to make it kind of difficult for people to understand what was going on, but I was so
mm.
devastated after that, and I was just like, why am I so sad? And so then I started to do a lot of introspection, and that was sort of like the gender identity and queer awakening happened like about the same time. Yeah, where I was just
Mm.
like, oh, it's because I'm
Wow.
actually part of this community. It's not just like someone as a bystander. Like this affects me. Yeah.
Wow. So did you started to then actively participate in activities in the community? Like how did you start to, I guess, strengthen that identity of yours?
I feel like I just read a lot. Yeah. Cause like, and I did go to like gay bars and stuff, but I've always gone to gay bars just because I don't like getting hit on by
Mm-hmm.
men necessarily. And
Mm.
like, no one's gonna hit on you at a gay bar for homosexual guys because you're not the target
Right.
audience. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think just like being in those spaces and feeling safe, and then also starting to do drag. So I started doing drag kinging in like 2019, which was like 1 year after.
Right.
And that helped me connect with community.
So like what do you wish more Asian and Asian families understood about queerness? Not just in terms of like identity, but also as a worldview and a way of living.
I wish more Asians knew that like we've always been queer and like queerness is part of Asian culture, because I feel like especially after like westernization, modernization and World War II, a lot of like Judeo-Christian values have been imposed upon us because of colonization and like the pressure to modernize.
Right.
But if you look at actual Asian literature and history, like we have so many beautiful queer stories, both like, homosexual men, homosexual women, things like that, and just like recognizing that it's a part of our culture. It's not like a Western construct. And it's natural. It happens across all cultures around the world, and it has for like hundreds of thousands of years, like however long humans have been around. And you can see that like in
Right.
history, like in our stories, also just like in nature. There's gay animals like anytime you have binary sexes. So it's not unnatural. And that's what I wish more Asian families knew, that it's not,
There
it's
is
not a weird
so
import,
much.
it's not Western, it's how, yeah.
Yeah, there are just so many values that's driven by religion, right? Like if you even think about monogamy, for example, like that was driven by religion as well. And I think that because we live in the modern era and a lot of rules are imposed on us like subconsciously, right? When you're growing up. And I think that it's funny because you mentioned about queerness in the Asian culture. I'm not sure it's because I grew up in China. I never got exposed to that part of the culture. Like,
The Cultural
I don't
Revolution.
even think that
I blame
I
the
never
Cultural
even
Revolution.
read any like history book talking about queerness. Like it's just I'm not sure it's because I wasn't looking out for it, but it's definitely not in your face, you know?
Yeah, no, they erased it. They erased it from our history because they want to control the people. So yeah, but you can, we have so many beautiful
Yeah.
like homoerotic stories, like lesbian stories. If you look at like old fables and like classical literature, like it's out there. Things like in Japan, like Tale of Genji, one of the most moving scenes is when he's like a I think he's like a daimyo or something, and he has like a male lover who like fell asleep on his sleeve, and he has to get up, so he cuts his
Yeah.
sleeve off so he doesn't disturb his lover who's sleeping, and that's become like a whole
Wow.
thing in theater. Yeah, so it's like it's part of the culture. It just has been sort of like diminished or erased because of like Western pressures and nation building and things like that after the Second World.
I mean, I just don't understand because, obviously Taiwan is the first place in Asia that even legalized, you said like, same-sex marriage, and doesn't seem like they have legalized it so far. No other places in Asia has even done anything close to that, right? Like, for example, in Singapore, like gay
Yeah,
sex was illegal up until I think last year or year before. Ironically, I think
yeah.
lesbian sex has always been legal, which I just don't understand it. I'm pretty sure they have their own reasons, but it's just, to me, it's like, it seems like there is some kind of assumption, right, about what is right, what is wrong. And, maybe a part of it comes from religion, but like, for example, even in China, like, how could that be religion, right? Because we don't have religion, we have communism. Like, it's just,
Mhm.
what was the undertone, right, of kind of that narrative?
Yeah, I think for me, it's more about like controlling the people, right? Because if you restrict their freedom, like, and they're forced into these like very more rigid ways of living, they don't really question it. So it's more about
Yeah,
controlling the people's psyche and not necessarily like religion is one way to do it, but it's not necessarily religion. It can be because of just nation building, which I think is more of what
yeah,
happened in China. Yeah. It's about like
yeah.
control, not
Oh my
necessarily
gosh. So
moral right.
it's just like you just give me like a light bulb moment because so it seems like a lot of countries, doesn't matter whether it's country or culture or any kind of a collective interest, right? They always have their own agenda. So, as you mentioned, it could be control, it could be nation building, but it's not necessarily, in your best interest. And they create perhaps a set of rules for you to follow, which limit a person's life. And also, I think what makes it even more limiting is that even if you are aware of these things later on in life, because you're perhaps like brainwashed, right? Like in a younger age, to break through from it will take so much more damage, right? So a lot of people simply just won't do it. But then the thing is, if you don't do it, and then now you have this awareness that there's something better out there, right? Will make me happier. Won't that make you more miserable?
Mm-hmm. It's like a weird like psychological game or like a catch-22 or something. But
Yeah,
yeah.
that's insane. Anyways, thanks for the insights there, because that was answering some of the questions I didn't even know I had. Um, okay, so what do you feel Taiwan gets right or wrong when it comes to embracing diversity and multiplicity?
I think on a government level, like, and I always talk about society sort of like a hard structure, soft structure sort of way. So I feel like Taiwan has quite good hard structure for many things. For example, with same-sex marriage, with like the increasing government initiatives to embrace diversity, including like indigenous rights, indigenous revitalization, also a lot of like the Southeast Asia initiatives sort of like helping migrant workers and things like that, to encourage sort of like diversity in Taiwan's population. I think that's been quite good.
Mhm.
And also on the soft culture front, right? So soft culture, not soft, like soft power front. So sort of like society, like a lot of like the unwritten rules and stuff, or like ways that society runs, I think is a lot better than other places, just because like they do have at least government mandates to do these things. But obviously, just because the government mandates something doesn't mean that it is greatly appreciated by the people, right? So like we do still have, we do still have
Right.
conservative families, for example, that won't accept their children if they are gay or gender nonconforming. And there are, for example, barriers for people, for example, single women or lesbians, if they want to fertilize their own eggs. So the government, because we are having like
Right.
a low birth rate, the government does have initiatives to help women to freeze their eggs so that they can have
Yeah.
babies later when they choose to. However, the laws are pretty archaic. It's like you can freeze your eggs, we have subsidies for that, but you can't actually fertilize your eggs legally in Taiwan as a Taiwanese citizen unless you have the cosign of a male husband. And that just kind of comes from like traditional mindset, right?
Okay. Well, but then what's the point of even doing that, right? Like, you might as well just get pregnant naturally unless you're like actually quite older that you can't really do it. Like, you go through IVF. But if you're a single woman and you just wanted to have a baby, like you wanted to go to like a sperm bank and do IVF that way, then you can't really do it, right? Like, if the law doesn't
Yeah.
mandate that.
Yeah. So it's like we are doing a lot of things well, but there is definitely a lot of room for improvement. So, yeah.
Yeah. So one thing I do notice about Taiwan, because I was just there a few months ago, it seems like it really promotes creativity and it's almost like you can be who you want to be. So like the freedom is in the air, right? More so than, when I come back to Singapore, like it's a cultural desert. There are not a lot of creativities, right? And it's not because like that is not encouraged. It almost feels like people just, like they grew up, they didn't even learn that's a possibility because it doesn't make money. You know what I mean? So it's not even like
Mhm.
I don't like it or something like that. It's more like, does that create value for the society? Does that create monetary value for the society and for my family? If no, then I don't want to do it. But in Taiwan, it just seems like people just do whatever they like to do a lot more than other places that I've seen in, East Asia.
Yeah, I do feel like we have that level of freedom, right? And it's interesting that you say that Taiwan is a very creative place because I feel like I've heard that a lot from people who aren't Taiwanese. And then if you actually Taiwanese artists, they're like they don't teach it enough. Like arts and creativity in the actual Taiwanese like education system is like hugely underfunded and very much not valued, which is interesting because like despite that we do still have like a very vibrant and creative society. I mean, from the outside, yeah. I think that's what it feels like.
What do you think? What do you think that is? Like, what's the reason for that?
I think because like most of the policymakers are quite traditional, right? So like Taiwan sort of like came into itself or like became more developed because of manufacturing. And obviously we do more like high tech manufacturing now, like TSMC and stuff like that. But it isn't like the like modus operandi, right? The modus operandi, if you want to like move upward, socioeconomically, whatever, is to like go to school, get a degree in like electrical engineering or like programming or something, and then like go work for one of the big companies, make a good salary. You can work for a bank if you want, whatever, be an accountant. But creativity as a
Right.
field is actually not traditionally encouraged unless you happen to come from like a musician family or like an art
Mm.
family. But
But
those are like quite
But
rare.
but then if that's the case, how come people are still like quite creative compared to other places in Asia?
I think because Taiwanese are very stubborn, honestly. Especially the artists. It's like I feel like it's kind of a trope, right? Like people will just be like, oh, just like 很艺术家. Like if you have a strong personality or like you dress different or something. And I feel like it's quite true. It's like if you're an artist and like you want to be an artist in this society, it does take a lot of courage and commitment and just like willingness to be yourself despite everything that society is telling you. And I feel like Taiwanese are
Yeah.
just very, very, very determined. So
Yeah.
yeah, like there's like if you look at like the grants and stuff that we give out, right? So not to badmouth anyone, but like if you look at the film grants we have, right? It's like the amounts that they're giving out are so infinitesimally small, like compared to what is normal on the global scale or like for a developed country with the GDP that we have. Like you can see on
Right.
like policy level that this is not something that people really value, but we do it anyways because it's like, why not? Like I want to. So
That's crazy.
there is no monetary value, but there is immense like
Yeah.
emotional value or spiritual value or just like satisfaction from doing creativity.
Yeah.
So like I feel like, most of my friends
Okay.
who are artists. No, sorry, you go first.
Yeah. So, okay. So I just want to, yeah. So I was just going to say, like, I have a working theory about this because the part of China that my family's from, so it's like the Zhejiang province and it's East Coast, right? Like next to Shanghai. And there's a lot of people because that's where Chiang Kai-shek is from.
Mm-hmm.
His hometown is right next to mine, and I understand exactly what he says when he's speaking in Shanghainese dialect because he doesn't speak Mandarin, but I understand it, right? Because we're from the
Mm-hmm.
same area. And I think that a lot of people, like, like my great grandpa, KMT, police officer, head of police, a lot of these people, they end up following Chiang Kai-shek when, they left China and they went to Taiwan. That place in China is like historically very much cultural driven. So there's a lot of writers, a lot of
Mm-hmm.
musicians, people who value knowledge. Even now, actually, even now, like if you look at what, the famous scientists, famous engineers, if you look at where they're from, a lot of them are from the Shanghai area, east coast of China.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that there's something where in the DNA of people from that area, like we just value these things more than like if like if you're talking about stereotype, the Cantonese people are more business driven, right? So that's kind of
Mm-hmm.
like how it is. That's just my working theory. I could be completely bullshitting. So please don't take it seriously.
Yeah. I do feel like there's some truth to that sometimes. Like, but I also feel like Cantonese people have really beautiful culture too, right? If you think about like Hong Kong film and like Hong Kong music back in the day, those were such
Don't you
huge
think it's
cultural.
Yeah, but don't you think it's very different? It's like their music is like if the lyric, I don't know if it's Cantonese or something, but it's just not as elegant. I mean, like that's just my take. I felt like the Taiwanese, and maybe just because I understand Mandarin, I feel like the lyrics from, the Taiwanese music, it's just so much more like feminine compared to like the Cantonese music, and how they pronounce and how they write the words.
Yeah, I do agree. I feel like Mandarin tends to be more romantic and feminine relative to maybe like Cantonese. I feel like Cantonese is very like it's very aggressive, right? Which is just like
Yeah.
a different
Yeah.
quality. Like it's not necessarily
Yeah.
good or bad. It's just it's a different flavor. So like if
Yeah.
you want
For sure.
elegant,
For sure.
Mandarin is great for that. Like Mando pop, like Mando ballads are like so beautiful. Like if you ever want to like cry,
Yeah.
sob, and like have a heartbreak song, like Mando pop is where it's
Yeah.
at.
So, okay. So, what is one cultural belief or tradition that you've completely redefined on your own term?
Oh, I don't know. I feel like I've just broken a lot of them. I'm trying to think.
That was the biggest one.
Maybe like the whole like having a stable career. Because I feel like I've just, like my friend was telling me, she's
Mm.
like, I feel like you've had so many like different careers, you just keep hopping around. And I'm like, yeah, it's because like, people ask me to do things. And then I'm like, yeah, okay, let's try it. So like I went from like
Hmm.
translation to journalism to filmmaking and then like performance. And then like I started doing music recently. And it's very like flowy, but it's very different from like what I think most Asian parents want, which is like one career, stable, just do the thing, like your
Yeah.
whole life, climb the corporate ladder or whatever. And yeah, I feel like that's
Yeah.
something that I definitely just sort of like
Yeah.
not doing that. Yeah.
Okay. So, I definitely have question about that because just from, because I was in corporate for a long time and then I started to do my own business and stuff. But even if I felt like Asian culture has these like undertone of success where it doesn't matter what you do. It's like you're gonna be successful. And if you're not a successful lawyer, you're gonna be a successful, I don't know, like legal tech start founder. You know what I mean? Like you
Yeah.
gotta just choose. If you choose something else, you want to make sure that you are the top 1% or something, right? Have you ever had a pressure,
Yeah.
like that kind of pressure? And because it seems like you just go where, first of all, it seems like you're willing to try out different things. And also it seems like you just go where your heart wants to do. Why did you have such freedom?
I mean, I do feel like part of it is like the meditation definitely helps because it's like you just feel so grounded as you're moving forward because you're like, oh, this is right for me right now, therefore I should do it.
Mm,
And then also like, yeah, I think because like the alternative is to like work an office job, and I'm like, okay, I guess if this doesn't work out, like I can fall back to doing an office job. But it's been going okay. I'm still alive. I'm still out here, still doing things. So I'm just gonna like ride
yeah.
this wave until something else
Yeah, yeah,
happens.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So yeah, I guess
Interesting.
that's
Okay,
that's
so
just how it's been.
I think, okay, so one thing I picked up from what you said there is that it's not just meditation, right? It's because I think
Yeah.
that meditation gives you a different frame for decision making where you ask yourself whether you want to do certain thing or not versus looking around and seeking validation from different sources, which most people do, when they make decisions.
Yeah. But I will say, I do feel like there is still some pressure, right? Because, like, for example, like, because I do like drag and stuff, like talent stuff. And so, like, I was talking to my mom the other day, and she's like, why aren't you famous yet? And I'm just like, I don't know. Like, I've been on Netflix, global. Like, you can watch me in
Right.
190 countries around the world. It's been dubbed into 12 different
Yeah.
languages. Like, I feel like that's pretty
Yeah.
successful. And, like, I was recently on, like, a variety show in Taiwan. It's, like, the biggest variety show.
Right.
And she's still just, like,
Yeah.
so unimpressed.
She's
And,
like,
like, even
she's
though,
like, she's like, you're now Jimmy O Yan. When are you gonna be Jimmy O Yan?
and I'm like, okay, I guess maybe I should move to New York, like Jimmy and Ronnie and all those guys, and like try to, do a comedy special with Netflix or, write for Saturday Night Live or The Daily Show. I actually really love The Daily Show.
Gosh.
Like, if I could
Yeah,
do The
yeah.
Daily Show, that would be so fun. Like, they
That'll be
need
the
they need
next
more
target
representation.
for sure.
Okay, next target. We're gonna go right for The Daily Show. I want to be on The Daily Show. Yeah. So yeah, I'm just
So
like, come on. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I got, a lot of sympathy there for you just because, like that's just so typical Asian parents. It's not, I don't think they're not proud of you. I think they just, it's almost like that's their way to say like 加油, that's their way to be like, oh, like way to go, but
Yeah.
you have the next, you know, goal you can focus on or something like that, right? Like, so it's almost like they're
Yeah.
supportive, but they think that you shouldn't slack off. Like that's like the very nuanced way to convey the message.
Yeah, I feel like that too.
But I wanted to like, how did you even get on Netflix? I'm curious.
So I knew the producer, like the local producer. So her name's Betty, and
Yeah.
so she came to me initially because she was doing research, right? She was just like nightlife in Asia, like, okay, so what's going on in Taipei? And I was like, okay, cool. So there's like these clubs, these parties, like these, people who are organizers, like go talk to them. There's like mainstream, there's all whatever you want, like go for it. And then she went and did research, and then she came back and was like, oh, so I heard you're a drag king. And I'd only been doing it for like a year at the time. Like I didn't tell her that. Like she went and found out on her own.
Right.
And she was like, okay,
Right.
like I feel like this is a really interesting story. Like, do you want to be on Netflix? And I was like, yeah, okay, sure, why not? Because like not that many people know about drag kings. And so I'm really passionate about
Yeah.
spreading the drag king lore and like letting people know that like we are also out here. So yeah, so then she went back and like talked to her producer, her other like higher up producer and the director. So it was like this Italian guy, Stefano, and then we had a local Taiwanese crew that he was like remote casting while they were filming to the crew in Malaysia and I think also Singapore. It was really cool. Like
Wow.
COVID was hard,
Yeah.
but like there were so many cool innovations and workarounds that people did.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And so
Yeah.
that's
It
how I
didn't,
ended up. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, it just seemed very normal. I didn't know it was even filmed during COVID. Like, it didn't seem like you guys had any, restrictions there. Just like everything was like open and, the bar scene, the nightlife and everything. Like, cause it is a lot about nightlife, right? And I didn't know that was filmed during COVID.
Yeah. Well, because like Taiwan never shut down. We closed our borders, but like
Yeah.
internally, like it was business as usual for the longest time. Like,
Gotcha. Okay. Interesting. So what advice would you give to a younger queer Asian who feels like they're never gonna belong anywhere?
I think come home to yourself first. That's like the most important thing, right? Because you have to know who you are before you can know what kind of community is right for you. And I do feel like that might be harder when you're young because, if you grew up in like a more rural area, like we're technically suburban, but like right on the edge, like there isn't as much, maybe like queer representation. You might not have as many access to resources and things like that. But we do have the internet now. Like we live in the age of information. So it's very possible to find community online and things like that. So there's like workarounds if you are like geographically or like otherwise isolated from people who uh, like have a common interest or like your particular community, right? So that's sort of the advice I would give is to first come home to yourself. Like really know who you are as a person, what your values are, how you identify, and you can sort of like go from there. Yeah. Use the internet.
Right. And
You're-
yeah, so I think I think Reddit definitely helps a lot of people in that sense. And what if they're very scared? Say like they're on the verge of, it's almost like they're coming out and they're like, like what's the consequences of that? Like maybe I can just fake another day. Like what would you say to these people?
I mean, you don't have to come out if you don't feel safe. I think that's one thing that comes up quite often in our community. It's like not everyone is privileged enough to be in an environment where it is safe to
True.
express or show up in the world the way that you would like to. So safety is obviously the most important. For example, if you're like a young person and you know that your family is conservative and you might get kicked out if you come out, like don't do it. You can just like wait. But I think having supportive friends around you, even if like they're not queer themselves or like however you identify, if you're like a goth kid, there's no goth kids, like, you can still have friends who identify differently than you, but as long as they're good friends, so like they're supportive, they make you feel seen and heard and safe, I think is really important. Having that, I think, is just really valuable, right? Don't be afraid to like lean on your community when you need it. Whether they're like there with you in person
Yeah.
or online. Yeah, because there are, there's like forums and stuff, support groups and things for people like this.
That's so amazing. I mean, like, I think that, online community really helps a lot of people with anything that is more like a little bit unspoken, a little bit more taboo, or, there's a bit of guilt and shame in it. It's definitely a great place to check out that even people with miscarriages, and this is not even something shameful, but there's a lot of psychological trauma that they go through and that nobody else understands, right?
Yeah, definitely, yeah.
Okay, so the last question I ask every single guest on the show is, I am going to give you a sentence and you just need to fill out the blank. So the sentence is, I am proud of myself because blank.
Okay. I am proud of myself because I keep showing up in my truth and my authenticity despite everything that's going on in the world.
Like it's very obvious to me a lot of decisions you've made are really hard to a average person, but the fact that you can make them and don't even think it's a, at least like from what I heard, I felt like you don't even think that's a big deal. It shows that you don't just you don't just recognize this is the right thing for you, but you embody that courage. And that's not just courage itself, but it's like a deep-seated confidence, right? Because you basically can say, this is who I am, and I'm going to act on my values and the person I wanted to be, no matter what. And that is a
deep, deep sense of confidence.
Thank you.
Anyway, thanks so much, Darice. I mean, it's great to have you on the show. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
If this conversation sparked something in you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And if you're building a more true life, not just more impressive, we would love to hear your story. Follow us on Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok at Asian Rebel Club and join our newsletter for more ways to connect. Link in the description. Until next time.